Vincent Harper opened his eyes to the soft morning light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment. For the 23rd morning in a row, he woke with the same lingering sensation. Her face remained vivid in his mind. A woman with gentle hazel eyes, dark hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and a smile that carried both intelligence and warmth. He could remember every detail from his dream. The way she laughed at something he said, the thoughtful expression she wore while discussing technology, even the small dimple that appeared on her left cheek when she smiled genuinely. Vincent sat up and ran his hands through his hair, trying to shake off this strange feeling. At 34, he had built Genesis Innovations from a small startup into one of San Francisco's most promising tech companies. He was known for his logical thinking, his data-driven decisions, and his ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. Dreams were just random neural activity during sleep. Nothing more. Yet these dreams felt different. They felt like memories of something that had not yet happened. A woman's journey begins 3,000 miles away in Seattle. Natalie Chen stood at her apartment window, watching the rain paint patterns on the glass. She held a steaming cup of tea between her palms, but her mind was far from the peaceful morning ritual. The dreams had started 6 weeks ago, unexpected and vivid. Every night, she found herself in the company of a man she had never met. He had kind blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, light brown hair with natural highlights, and a presence that made her feel understood in ways no one else ever had in her dreams. They walked through city streets she did not recognize, talked about innovations in artificial intelligence, and shared quiet moments that felt more real than her waking life. Natalie was a practical person. She had graduated top of her class from Stanford, built a successful career as a software architect, and approached life with careful planning and rational thinking. These dreams defied everything she believed about how the world worked, yet she could not deny their impact on her. The decision that changed to lives Natalie had made a decision 3 weeks ago. She would leave Seattle and move to San Francisco. Her friends questioned the choice. She had a great job, a comfortable life, and strong professional connections in Seattle. Why risk it all for uncertainty? But Natalie could not explain the pull she felt toward San Francisco. It was as if invisible threads were guiding her toward something important, something necessary. She had spent the past weeks applying to various tech companies in the Bay Area. One application stood out. Genesis Innovations was looking for a senior software architect to lead their new quantum computing division. The job description seemed written specifically for her skills and interests. When she submitted her application 2 weeks ago, she felt a strange sense of rightness, as if she were following a path that had been laid out long before she became aware of it the morning that shifted. Reality Vincent arrived at his office on the 42nd floor of the Genesis Tower at 7 in the morning. He enjoyed these quiet hours before the rest of the team arrived, time to think and plan without interruption. His assistant, Patricia, had left his schedule on the desk, along with files for the candidates he would be interviewing today. They were in the final stages of hiring for the senior architect position, a crucial role for their expansion into quantum computing. Vincent picked up the stack of candidate files and began reviewing them. The first 2 were impressive. Strong technical backgrounds, innovative thinking, solid references. Then he opened the 3rd file, and the world seemed to stop. The photograph clipped to the resume showed a woman with hazel eyes and dark wavy hair. It was her. The woman from his dreams, captured in perfect detail in a professional headshot. Natalie Chen, the name read. 29 years old, currently based in Seattle. Extensive experience in artificial intelligence and quantum systems. Vincent's hands trembled slightly as he read through her qualifications. She was brilliant. Her work on integrated quantum algorithms had been published in several prestigious journals. Her recommendations were outstanding. She was exactly the kind of talent Genesis Innovations needed. But that was not why his heart was racing. This woman had been in his dreams for nearly a month. How was that possible? When logic meets mystery, Vincent set down the file and walked to the window, trying to make sense of the impossible. He was a man of science, of reason, of evidence-based thinking. Precognition did not exist. Dreams were not glimpses into the future. Yet here was proof that contradicted everything he believed. He pulled out his phone and checked the date when Natalie had submitted her application. It was 2 weeks ago, but the dreams had started 6 weeks before that. He had been dreaming about her before she had even applied to his company. Vincent tried to find logical explanations. Perhaps he had seen her photo somewhere before, at a conference or in a publication, and his subconscious had created these dreams. But he knew that did not explain the depth of the dreams, the conversations they had, the feelings they shared. He had dreamed about walking with her through parks he recognized as being in San Francisco, places she had presumably never been if she lived in Seattle. Parallel awakenings back in Seattle. Natalie received an email that made her breath catch. Genesis Innovations wanted to schedule a final interview. She would meet with the executive team, including the founder and CEO, Vincent Harper. Natalie immediately searched for information about the company leadership. When Vincent's photo loaded on her screen, she felt her knees weaken. She gripped the edge of her desk for support. It was him. The man from her dreams looking back at her from the company website. Those same blue eyes, that same genuine smile. Even the way he held himself in the photograph matched exactly what she had seen in her sleep. Natalie sat down slowly, her mind racing. This could not be coincidence. She must have seen his photo before, when researching the company. That had to be the explanation. But Natalie knew she had been careful in her job search, focusing on the positions and requirements rather than executive profiles. She would have remembered that face. The moment of truth approaches as Natalie booked her flight to San Francisco for the interview scheduled in 3 days. She felt equal parts excitement and fear. Something extraordinary was happening, something that defied rational explanation. Part of her wanted to cancel the interview, to run back to the safety of her predictable life in Seattle. But a deeper part of her knew that she had to see this through. Whether this was fate, coincidence, or something else entirely. She needed to know the truth. Vincent spent the rest of that morning preparing for the interviews. But his mind kept returning to Natalie's file. In 3 days, he would finally meet the woman who had somehow entered his dreams. He told himself to remain professional, to focus on her qualifications and nothing else. But he knew that when she walked through his office door, everything he thought he understood about reality might change forever. Natalie stepped off the plane at San Francisco International Airport with her carry-on bag gripped tightly in her hand. The California sun felt warmer than Seattle's perpetual gray skies. And something about the air itself seemed different here. She had arrived a day early, telling herself it was to prepare and get familiar with the city. But truthfully, she needed time to calm her racing thoughts before the interview. That evening, Natalie walked through the streets near her hotel, taking in the sights of San Francisco. The hills, the Victorian houses painted in cheerful colors, the distant view of the bay. Everything felt strangely familiar, like returning to a place she had visited long ago. She passed a small park with benches overlooking the water, and her steps slowed. This park, she had seen it before. Not in photographs or travel videos, but in her dreams. She and Vincent had sat on one of these very benches, talking about the future of technology and sharing stories about their lives. Natalie sat down on that same bench now, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Tomorrow, she would walk into Genesis Innovations and come face to face with a man who should be stranger, but felt like someone she had known forever. The logical part of her brain insisted this was all just elaborate coincidence. Pattern recognition gone wild, her subconscious playing tricks, but her heart knew differently. Something profound was unfolding, and she was both terrified and thrilled to discover what it meant. The morning of truth. Vincent barely slept the night before the interviews. He stood in his closet at 5 a.m, staring at his suits as if the choice of tie color could somehow prepare him for what was coming. He selected a dark blue suit with a simple gray tie, professional and understated. As he knotted the tie, he caught his own reflection in the mirror. He looked tired, uncertain, not at all like the confident CEO who made million-dollar decisions without hesitation. By the time Vincent arrived at Genesis Innovations, the sun was just beginning to rise over the city. He made himself coffee in the executive kitchen, reviewed his notes for the interviews. and tried to convince himself that this would be just another day of hiring decisions. But when Patricia arrived at 8 and confirmed that all 3 candidates were scheduled and ready, Vincent felt his composure crack slightly. Natalie Chen would be the last interview of the day, arriving at 2 in the afternoon. The morning interviews went smoothly. Both candidates were qualified and would be good additions to the team. Vincent took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and maintained his professional demeanor. But underneath, a current of anticipation hummed through him. Every glance at the clock brought him closer to the moment that had been approaching since the dreams began. The moment reality shifted. Natalie stood in the lobby of Genesis Innovations at 1:45. 15 minutes before her scheduled interview, the building was impressive, all glass and steel, with an open design that spoke of innovation and forward thinking. Digital displays showcased the company's projects, advanced artificial intelligence systems, quantum computing breakthroughs, sustainable technology initiatives. This was exactly the kind of environment where she wanted to work, where her skills could make a real difference. Patricia appeared in the lobby with a warm smile, introducing herself and offering to escort Natalie upstairs. As they rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, Patricia made pleasant conversation about the company culture and the exciting projects in development. Natalie tried to focus on her words, tried to remember the talking points she had prepared, but her heart was beating so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The elevator doors opened onto a spacious floor with an open office layout. Natural light flooded through floor-tizzling windows, and the energy of the space felt creative and alive. Patricia led Natalie down a corridor to a conference room with a view of the city skyline. Inside, 3 members of the executive team were already seated. Patricia introduced them. Jennifer Moore, Chief Technology Officer; David Patel, Head of Innovation; and Thomas Wright, Chief Operating Officer. They greeted Natalie warmly and invited her to sit. When eyes first met Vincent, entered the conference room exactly at 2 o'clock, and time seemed to fracture. Natalie looked up as the door opened, and their eyes met across the space. For a suspended moment, the rest of the world fell away. Vincent saw a recognition flash across her face, the same recognition he felt coursing through his entire being. This was not the polite acknowledgement of meeting someone new. This was the profound shock of seeing someone who should not exist outside of dreams, suddenly made real. Natalie felt the air leave her lungs. The photographs had not captured the full impact of his presence. Vincent was taller than she had imagined, and there was a quality to him that no picture could convey. A depth in those blue eyes that spoke of intelligence, kindness, and something else. Something that matched the connection she had felt in her dreams. She watched him pause for just a fraction too long before moving forward to shake her hand. Vincent crossed the room, aware that everyone was watching, aware that he needed to appear normal and professional. When he took Natalie's hand in his, the contact sent a jolt through him. Her hand was warm, her grip firm and confident, and the simple touch felt impossibly significant. He saw her eyes widen slightly, noticed the way her breath caught, and knew she felt it too. Whatever this was, it was not one-sided. The interview that defied convention. Vincent took his seat at the head of the table and opened Natalie's file. Though he had already memorized every detail, he began with standard questions about her background, her experience, her approach to problem-solving. Natalie answered with confidence and clarity, discussing her work on quantum algorithms and her vision for the future of integrated systems. Her intelligence was evident in every response. The other executives nodded approvingly as she spoke. But beneath the professional exchange, another conversation seemed to be happening. Vincent found himself asking questions that went beyond the technical. He wanted to know how she approached challenges, what drove her passion for technology, what she hoped to achieve in her career. Natalie responded with thoughtful answers that revealed not just her skills but her character. She spoke about wanting to create technology that made a real difference in people's lives, about the responsibility that came with innovation, about the importance of ethical considerations in advancing artificial intelligence. Jennifer asked about specific projects Natalie had led, and as Natalie described her work, Vincent noticed small details that aligned perfectly with conversations from his dreams. The way she gestured when explaining complex concepts, the slight tilt of her head when considering a question, the genuine enthusiasm in her voice when discussing breakthrough moments. Everything felt familiar and right in a way that transcended logic. The question. That changed everything as the interview progressed. David asked Natalie why she wanted to leave Seattle and join Genesis Innovations specifically. Natalie paused, and Vincent saw something shift in her expression. She could give the expected answer about career growth and exciting opportunities, but instead, she chose honesty. I believe that sometimes we are guided toward where we need to be, even if we do not fully understand why, Natalie said carefully. When I read about this position, something told me this was where I was meant to go next. I know that sounds unusual for someone in a technical field, but I have learned to trust those instincts. Beyond that, your work in quantum computing aligns perfectly with my research interests, and I believe I could contribute meaningfully to your team. Vincent felt something tighten in his chest. Her words echoed his own feelings about the inexplicable pull that had led to this moment. The other executives seemed satisfied with her answer, viewing it as passion and intuition about career choices. But Vincent heard the deeper meaning beneath her words. She was feeling this too. This sense of destiny or fate or whatever name could be given to the invisible threads drawing them together, the decision made in silence. Interview continued for another 30 minutes, covering technical details, team dynamics, and company vision. Natalie was impressive on every level. Her qualifications were exceptional, her ideas innovative, and her personality would fit well with the company culture. When the formal questions concluded, Jennifer and David exchanged glances that clearly communicated their approval. Thomas nodded slightly, indicating his agreement. Vincent thanked Natalie for her time and explained that they would make their decision within the next few days. As everyone stood and shook hands, Vincent held Natalie's gaze for a moment longer than necessary. He saw questions in her eyes that matched his own. How is this possible? What does this mean? Are you feeling what I am feeling? Patricia escorted Natalie back to the elevator, leaving the executive team in the conference room. The moment the door closed, Jennifer spoke first. She is exceptional. Exactly what we need for the quantum division. I think we should make her an offer immediately. David and Thomas agreed enthusiastically. They looked at Vincent for his decision as CEO. Vincent stood at the window, watching the city below, knowing that his choice in this moment would change everything. He could choose logic and caution. He could say they needed more time to consider all candidates. He could protect himself from the unknown and inexplicable nature of what was happening. The leap of faith. Vincent turned to face his team. Make the offer today. Full package with relocation assistance. I want her to start as soon as she can arrange the move from Seattle. As his executives left to begin the hiring process, Vincent remained alone in the conference room. He picked up Natalie's file one more time, looking at her photograph, and allowed himself to acknowledge the truth he had been avoiding. This was not just about hiring a talented employee. This was about recognizing that some connections transcend explanation, that some meetings are too significant to be mere coincidence. In 3 days, he had gone from experiencing impossible dreams to making a decision that would bring those dreams into his waking reality. Vincent did not know what would happen next. He did not know if Natalie would accept the offer, if she felt the same inexplicable connection, or if this would lead to something meaningful, or simply remain an unsolved mystery. But he knew that he had to find out. Some opportunities only come once, and some people enter your life in ways that demand you pay attention. Natalie sat in her hotel room that evening, staring at her laptop screen in disbelief. The email from Genesis Innovations had arrived just 2 hours after her interview. They were offering her the position with a compensation package that exceeded her expectations. Full relocation assistance, and a start date flexible to her needs. The speed of the offer was unusual. Most companies took days or even weeks to make hiring decisions, especially for senior positions. Yet here was a formal offer, professionally written and generous in every detail. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. Accepting this offer meant more than just a new job. It meant relocating to a new city, leaving behind the life she had built in Seattle, and stepping into something unknown. It also meant working alongside Vincent Harper, a man who had somehow occupied her dreams for weeks before she ever knew he existed. Natalie closed her eyes and let herself remember the interview. The moment their eyes had met, she had felt a recognition so profound it shook her understanding of reality. And she had seen that same recognition reflected in his expression. Natalie typed her response carefully. She accepted the offer and requested a start date 3 weeks away. Giving herself time to arrange the move and tie up loose ends in Seattle. After sending the email, she sat back and let out a long breath. She had just committed to a path that defied every logical instinct she possessed. Yet somewhere deep inside, she knew this was exactly what she was meant to do. 3 weeks of anticipation, Vincent threw himself into work during the 3 weeks before Natalie's arrival. He expanded the quantum computing division, assembled a team of talented engineers, and prepared projects that would challenge and inspire their new senior architect. But beneath all the professional preparation, he was wrestling with questions that had no rational answers. How could he have dreamed about someone he had never met? What did it mean that those dreams had started weeks before she applied to his company? And most importantly, what should he do about the undeniable connection he felt? Vincent had been in relationships before. His marriage to Claire had ended amicably 6 years ago, when they both realized they wanted different things from life. Since then, he had dated occasionally, but never found anyone who made him want to build something lasting. He had convinced himself that his work was enough, that personal fulfillment could come from innovation and success. But the dreams had awakened something in him that had been dormant for years. A longing for genuine connection, for someone who understood him completely. For a partnership that went beyond surface compatibility. On the Friday before Natalie's Monday start date, Vincent received an email from her with questions about the onboarding process. Her writing style was warm and professional, and he found himself reading the message multiple times, looking for hidden meaning in her choice of words. He responded with detailed information about her first week, keeping his tone appropriate for a CEO welcoming a new employee. But his finger hesitated over the send button, tempted to add something more personal. Something that acknowledged the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting. The first day of Forever Monday morning arrived with clear skies and the promise of autumn in the air. Natalie stood outside Genesis Innovations wearing a burgundy blazer and black pants, her portfolio bag over her shoulder. She had moved into a small apartment in the Mission District over the weekend, unpacking just enough to make the space livable. Everything felt surreal, like she was living in someone else's life. But when she stepped through the glass doors of Genesis Innovations, a sense of rightness settled over her. Patricia greeted Natalie in the lobby with a welcoming smile and a Genesis Innovations badge with her name already printed on it. As they rode the elevator upward, Patricia chatted about the team Natalie would be working with, the exciting projects in development, and the company culture that encouraged innovation and collaboration. Natalie listened and asked appropriate questions, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew that somewhere in this building, Vincent was starting his own day. Perhaps thinking about her arrival just as she was thinking about seeing him again. The quantum computing division occupied a section of the 38th floor with an open workspace design that encouraged collaboration. Patricia introduced Natalie to her team members. Rachel Kim, a brilliant physicist with expertise in quantum entanglement. Marcus Thompson, a software engineer who specialized in algorithm optimization. And Jenna Walsh, a project manager who kept complex initiatives on track. Everyone welcomed Natalie warmly, and she felt immediately that she would enjoy working with these people. When paths cross again, Vincent had intentionally stayed away from the quantum division that morning, giving Natalie space to settle in without the added complexity of his presence. But at 11 o'clock, he found himself walking toward the 38th floor, telling himself he was simply checking in on the new team member, as any good CEO would do. When he entered the quantum division workspace, he saw Natalie standing at a whiteboard with Rachel and Marcus. Deep in discussion about quantum state mapping, Natalie sensed his presence before she saw him. She turned, marker still in hand, and their eyes met across the open space. Vincent felt that same jolt of recognition, that same sense of rightness that defied explanation. He walked over with what he hoped was an appropriately professional smile. "Natalie, welcome to your first day. I hope everyone is making you feel at home." "They have been wonderful," Natalie replied, her voice steady, despite the rapid beating of her heart. "We were just discussing the framework for the new quantum encryption project. The potential applications are fascinating." Vincent engaged with the technical discussion, impressed by how quickly Natalie had grasped the scope of their work and begun contributing ideas. Her intelligence was evident, but more than that, her approach aligned perfectly with his own vision for where Genesis Innovations should go. As they talked about quantum systems and breakthrough possibilities, Vincent felt the same natural flow of conversation he had experienced in his dreams. Ideas built on each other, questions led to insights, and the collaboration felt effortless. The confession that could not wait too. Weeks passed with Natalie settling into her role beautifully. She led team meetings with confidence, developed innovative solutions to complex problems, and quickly became an essential part of the quantum division. Vincent found reasons to visit the 38th floor more often than necessary, and Natalie noticed. Their interactions remained professional, but underneath every conversation ran a current of unspoken connection. On a Friday evening, most of the staff had left for the weekend. Natalie was alone in the quantum division, working late on a presentation for the following week. She was so focused on her work that she did not hear Vincent approach until he spoke from the doorway. "You should not work this late on a Friday. Even brilliant architects need rest." Natalie looked up, surprised but pleased to see him. "I could say the same to you. I doubt the CEO usually roams empty floors at 7 in the evening." Vincent smiled and stepped into the workspace. "I saw the lights still on and wanted to make sure everything was all right. How are you finding San Francisco so far?" "It feels like home already," Natalie said honestly, "which is strange because I have only been here a few weeks. But there is something about this city, this company, this work that feels right." Vincent moved closer, and Natalie saw something shift in his expression. The professional mask he usually wore slipped, revealing uncertainty and hope beneath. He stood quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with a decision. Then he spoke words that would change everything between them. "Natalie, I need to tell you something. It might sound impossible, and you might think I have lost my mind, but I cannot keep this to myself any longer. Before you applied to Genesis Innovations, before I ever saw your photograph or knew your name, I was dreaming about you." The truth spoken aloud, Natalie felt her breath catch. She set down her pen slowly, her hands trembling. "What did you just say?" Vincent sat down in the chair across from her desk, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of vulnerability she had never seen from him before. "For nearly a month before you applied here, I had vivid dreams about a woman I had never met. In those dreams, we talked for hours, walked through the city together, shared ideas and laughter. I could see every detail of your face, hear your voice, know your mannerisms. I thought I was losing my mind. Then your application arrived with your photograph, and you were her. The woman from my dreams was real and applying to work at my company." Natalie stood up from her desk and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. Her mind was reeling, but not with disbelief. With relief, with recognition, with the profound understanding that she was not alone in this impossible experience. "Vincent," she said quietly, still facing the window, "I have been dreaming about you too. For 6 weeks before I even applied to Genesis Innovations, you were in my dreams every night. That is why I moved to San Francisco. Not just for career opportunities, but because something was pulling me here. When I saw your photograph on the company website, I thought I was going crazy. I convinced myself I must have seen your picture before and forgotten. But I knew that was not true." Vincent stood and moved to stand beside her at the window. How is this possible? Dreams are supposed to be random neural activity, not glimpses of people who will enter our lives. "I do not know," Natalie admitted, turning to face him. "I have spent weeks trying to find a logical explanation. Coincidence, pattern recognition, subconscious processing of information. But none of those explanations fit what we experienced. We both dreamed about each other before we met. That should be impossible." The moment of truth, they stood facing each other in the empty office, the city spread out behind them through the windows. The professional boundary that had existed between CEO and employees seemed irrelevant now. They were simply two people confronting something extraordinary together. "What do we do with this?" Vincent asked, his voice low. "I am your boss." "You just started working here?" "This violates every professional protocol I believe in. But I cannot pretend that what I feel is just professional respect or friendly collegiality. From the moment you walked into that interview, I have felt like I was reconnecting with someone I have known my entire life." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. "I feel it too. In the interview, when you asked me questions, I already knew how you thought, how you would respond, what mattered to you. Not because I researched you, but because I had spent weeks having conversations with you in my dreams. This should terrify me. It defies everything I understand about how the world works. But instead, it feels like the most true thing I have ever experienced." Vincent reached out slowly, giving Natalie every opportunity to step back. When she did not move away, he took her hand in his. The simple contact sent warmth through both of them, a physical confirmation of the connection they had been feeling since they met. "I do not understand what is happening," Vincent said. "I do not know if this is fate or coincidence, or something science has not yet explained. But I know that I cannot ignore it. I know that you came into my life in a way that demands I pay attention. And I know that I want to explore what this means, if you are willing." The beginning of something true. Natalie squeezed his hand gently. "I moved across the country, following an instinct I could not explain. I accepted a job at a company where the CEO had been haunting my dreams. I have already taken so many leaps of faith to get here. What is one more?" They stood together in the quiet office as night fell over San Francisco. Two rational people acknowledging something that transcended rationality. They talked for hours that evening, comparing their dreams, discovering the parallels and similarities, marveling at the impossibility that had somehow become reality. They shared stories about their lives, their hopes, their fears, filling in the details that dreams had only hinted at. As the clock approached midnight, Vincent walked Natalie to her car in the parking garage. Before she left, he spoke with careful honesty. "We should take this slowly. We work together, and I do not want to compromise your career or put you in an uncomfortable position. But I also cannot pretend this is nothing. Can we navigate this together? Find a way forward that honors both the professional relationship and this connection we share." Natalie nodded, understanding the complexity they were facing. "We will figure it out. Whatever this is, whatever it means, we will discover it together." 6 months later, the sun was setting over San Francisco as Natalie and Vincent walked through the small park near the waterfront. The same park where Natalie had sat on her first evening in the city. 6 months had passed since that night when they had confessed their dreams to each other. They had moved slowly and carefully, maintaining professional boundaries at work while exploring their personal connection outside the office. Natalie had proven herself invaluable to Genesis Innovations, leading breakthrough developments in quantum computing that had garnered industry attention. But more importantly, what had started as impossible dreams had grown into a deep and genuine love. They had learned each other not through mystical visions, but through real conversations, shared experiences, challenges faced together, and quiet moments of understanding. The dreams had stopped once they met, as if their purpose had been fulfilled. But the connection those dreams had predicted had only grown stronger. Vincent stopped at a bench overlooking the water, the same bench where Natalie had sat 6 months ago. "Do you remember when I asked you in the interview why you wanted to join Genesis Innovations?" Natalie smiled. "I said that sometimes we are guided toward where we need to be." "You were right," Vincent said, taking both her hands in his. "I spent years believing that life was just logic and rational choices and measurable outcomes. Then you appeared in my dreams, walked into my office, and showed me that some of the most important things in life cannot be explained or predicted. They can only be recognized and embraced when they arrive." Natalie felt tears of joy in her eyes. "I came to San Francisco following an instinct I did not understand. I found a career that challenges me, work that matters, and you. A connection that started in dreams, but became the most real thing in my life." Vincent pulled her close, and they stood together watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. They did not know why they had dreamed about each other before they met. Perhaps they never would. But they knew that some connections transcend explanation, that some meetings are written in ways we cannot see, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is trust the inexplicable. Pull toward another person. Their story had started with impossible dreams, but it had become a waking reality, more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. And as they stood together, overlooking the city that had brought them together, both Vincent and Natalie knew that this was just the beginning of the life they would build together, grounded not in mystical visions, but in genuine love, mutual respect, and the daily choice to honor the extraordinary gift they had been given. The dreams had shown them a possibility, but it was their courage, honesty, and willingness to embrace the unknown that had turned that possibility into a lasting truth.